Ding! Han Sen summoned the three-blade harpoon in his left hand and blocked the dagger in his face. In the next moment, while the skeleton had it back toward Han Sen, it quickly twisted his arm backward and stabbed at Han Sen again. The suddenness took Han Sen at a disadvantage. He did not have time to take back his sword or swing the harpoon. Whoosh! Han Sen used the sparticle and made a crucial step, dodging the dagger by a hair. The phantom ant armor was still scratched by the tip of the dagger and left with a shallow mark. Han Sen was shocked by how sharp the daggers were. Instantaneously, the other dagger in the skeleton's hand came from another incredible angle. Han Sen was also a master at short blades like these, but he had never seen someone could use these weapons in such a fascinating way. The skeleton's movements were as if they were all wrong. He could never predict the skeleton's next move, which made him feel very uncomfortable. It was like a musician hearing a song with all the wrong tempos. In addition, the skeleton was incredibly fast. Its attacks were almost continuous, making Han Sen almost desperate. This kind of close combat made the diamond sword a burden rather than a help. Han Sen did not even have time to put down the sword because the skeleton's strikes were dazzling. The skeleton's footwork and dagger skills left Han Sen in a huge disadvantage. Suddenly, he was injured in the chest. If it were not for the sacred blood armor, Han Sen would have been dead by now. With goosebumps all over his body, Han Sen summoned Meowth, which turned into a black tiger and threw itself at the skeleton. The white jade skeleton almost glided on the ground, moved away from the tiger and stabbed at Meowth with its dagger. Meowth turned back and snapped at the skeleton, which quickly took back the daggers and moved away. With its back toward Meowth, the skeleton turned its arm around in an impossible angle and stabbed at Meowth's stomach. Han Sen seized the opportunity and slashed the sword at the skeleton, his other hand grasping the harpoon to block the attack toward Meowth. Fighting a man and a cat, the white jade skeleton still seemed effortless and constantly made threatening attacks at Han Sen and Meowth. Very soon, Han Sen discovered that it was not a great idea to summon Meowth, as the skeleton actually used its miraculous footwork to confine their movements. This creature is rogue.
Han Sen kushid sekretly.
When Meowth was attacking the skeleton, he quickly ran away. At this point, both he and Meowth were injured, while the skeleton remained unharmed. There was no point in continuing the fight. Han Sen decided to retreat and think of a different method. Luckily, Meowth was distracting the skeleton, so that Han Sen could run far enough before he took Meowth back. The white jade skeleton would not leave Han Sen alone and quickly ran after him. Han Sen did not dare to hesitate anymore and dashed toward the path where he came from. The skeleton would not give up. It was even faster than Han's senator with Meowth's help. Han Sen retreated while fighting, eventually arriving at the broken wall. Han Sen quickly crawled through the opening, and the skeleton followed him. Drop dead. Han Sen was happy to see the skeleton moving into the narrow path, where its footwork would no longer work that well. Han Sen quickly drew the Beetle Knight's spear and stabbed it at the skeleton. In such a small space, a longer weapon was a lot better than a shorter one. The skeleton's daggers could not even reach Han Sen, and the skeleton had nowhere to hide. It had to cross the daggers in front of its chest to block the incoming spear. However, Han Sen's spear carried a strong spinning force, and the skeleton failed to stop it. Han Sen thought he must have been successful, but the skeleton quickly glided back like a phantom, faster than Han Sen when he used Sparticle. The skeleton seemed to be quite intellectual. Knowing it would not be Han Sen's match in the narrow path, it no longer tried to follow him, but chose to stay and guard the wall. Han Sen had to leave the nest. He had to think of a way to get rid of this white jade skeleton. Otherwise, he would never be able to reach where the egg was. Damn! There just happens to be a powerful sacred blood creature in this nest. Han Sen felt quite upset. He quietly crept out of the nest and killed a primitive ghost-eyed bear for food. Knowing that where the ghost-eyed bears lived was the entrance to the nest, Han Sen wanted to keep the sacred blood ghost-eyed bear and the mutant ones alive as watchdogs to keep other people out. Han Sen looked for a safe place in the mountains and collected some branches to make a fire. He then barbecued the primitive ghost-eyed bear, the paws of which were delicious. However, Han Sen's thoughts were on how the white jade skeleton fought. The skeleton had incredible techniques with the daggers, which mimicked assassination skills, in a way that the opponent would not be able to predict any attack. Han Sen could tell that these techniques were still somewhat different from assassination. It was purely technical and did not leverage the opponent's psychology. Using these techniques, the skeleton created a kind of disorder and made it impossible for someone to judge how it would react. In addition, the structure of the skeleton was also different from a normal person, allowing it to achieve all kinds of movements. If I want to kill it, I have to understand this tempo, otherwise I would never win. Han Sen carefully thought back every detail of the combats with the skeleton, trying to find some patterns from its movements. Su Rian was a bit worried that Han Sen might know about the Life Lotus. Although few people had seen a nest, all the information was readily available on the Skynet. If Han Sen could tell that there was a nest here, that would be horrible news to her. Not seeing Han Sen all day, Su Rian became a bit uneasy. She quickly consulted with Fu Shan and went to find Han Sen along with him and some other guys. They found Han Sen rather easily. Han Sen did not plan to hide anyway, since he did not want to make her overly suspicious. Su Rian and the Green Special Squad were not weak at all. If they were willing to sacrifice some lives, they might be able to enter the nest as well. At this point, they were not willing to take that kind of risk, and Han Sen did not want to push them. Han Sen was not sure how strong Su Rian's followers were, but he could tell that the Green Special Squad had strong members. Based on the criteria of a special squad, Han Sen assumed that all of them might be as strong as Gambler. When Su Rian and the rest came to find Han Sen, he was sitting on the lee side of the hill, enjoying delicious ghost-eyed bear barbecue. On the fire, there was more meat sizzling with grease. In fact, they had followed the fragrance to find him. It seemed that Han Sen had gotten another ghost-eyed bear. Others could not tell the level of the ghost-eyed bear anymore, since it was already cut into pieces. "Welcome. What brought you here?" Han Sen did not mean to stand up. He continued to chew on the barbecue meat and licked his fingers once in a while. Others were very much tempted by the barbecue. Although they each got some meat from the mutant ghost-eyed bear purchased by Su Rian, it was only a small piece. Most of the meat was kept as their food reserve. For people who had not tasted meat for a year, the small piece only triggered more greediness. Seeing Han Sen eating away, they all could not help swallowing. Su Rian saw that Han Sen was still here and felt much more relaxed. Everything would be fine if Han Sen did not enter the nest. "Han Sen, we came to talk about buying more ghost-eyed bear meat. You should know that the ghost-eyed bear would not last very long with so many people in the group," Su Rian smiled and said. She was only trying to tempt Han Sen to kill more mutant ghost-eyed bears. Han Sen pondered and replied, "That is not easy. I hunted again today and did not find any chance to kill a mutant ghost-eyed bear, so I had to kill a primitive ghost-eyed bear. How much will you pay for a primitive one?" Su Rian did not really need the meat, and a primitive ghost-eyed bear would be useless to her. She smiled and said, "We've all witnessed your ability. It is so easy for you to kill a mutant ghost-eyed bear. Now don't be humble. Yes, we maxed out on our primitive geno points a long time ago. We hoped that you could get us a few more mutant ghost-eyed bears, and we would pay you well," one of the guys working for Su Rian said. Han Sen smirked inwardly, but pretended to be ignorant. "It's not that I do not want to earn more beast souls. The mutant ghost-eyed bears were not that easy to kill. If they keep moving in groups, there is nothing I can do. I am even eating primitive ghost-eyed bear myself. If I could hunt a mutant one, why would I eat this?" The rest believed Han Sen's words, since they did not believe that mutant creatures were convenient to kill either. After all, Ghost-Eyed Bear was a strong creature. As an unevolved person, Han Sen could not be that strong. Su Rian suddenly smiled and said to Han Sen, "So how much do you want for a primitive ghost-eyed bear?" "Same price," Han Sen said, not even thinking. The group of people were dazed and did not understand what Han Sen meant. Su Rian looked at Han Sen and asked, "Sen, you did not mean that you want a mutant beast soul for this primitive ghost-eyed bear?" "Exactly," said Han Sen, nodding. "That makes absolutely no sense. A mutant ghost-eyed bear for a mutant beast soul. So why is a primitive ghost-eyed bear also worth a mutant beast soul?" asked Lu Ji. Lu Ji was planning to exchange one of his less advanced beast souls for a primitive ghost-eyed bear so that he could eat better. Who knew that Han Sen would ask for a mutant beast soul? Those who worked for Su Ruyan immediately protested and wanted to bargain with Han Sen. Han Sen insisted on the price. What I'm selling is meat, so it does not matter whether it is primitive or mutant. Same price, take it or leave it. I am trapped here anyways and have no use of your beast souls. As long as I can fill my own stomach, I would rather not to take any risks. None of them was willing to trade a mutant beast soul for a primitive ghost-eyed bear, so they all had to go back to the cave empty-handed. Han Sen did not mind that. Every day at lunchtime, he would go to the windward side of the cave and start a barbecue, trying to tempt the group. In the beginning, they could still hold it back and just eat pieces of the first ghost-eyed bear they bought. However, the taste of meat is addictive. After eating meat, they could hardly swallow the plants anymore. In addition, that first ghost-eyed bear did not last very long. Smelling the delicious barbecue every day, all of them wanted to kill Han Sen and take the meat for themselves. Han Sen was doing that every day both to keep them hooked and to reassure Su Ruyan that he had no idea about the existence of the nest. In fact, Han Sen would enter the nest every evening to fight the White Jade Skeleton. However, the White Jade Skeleton was so powerful that Han Sen could not get rid of it anytime soon. In the process of fighting the skeleton, Han Sen gradually became familiarized with its dagger skills and footwork. He was obsessed with finding a way to beat the skeleton. Han Sen had carefully observed the footwork and dagger skills of the White Jade Skeleton. In addition to the skeleton's movements that could not be achieved by any human, its footwork and dagger skills alone were very impressive. Both its footwork and dagger skills were always out of order. Even Han Sen, who was great at prejudgment, cannot capture how the skeleton moved and attacked. Without a doubt, it was a special kill set, which Han Sen was very eager to imitate. You must know your enemy before you could beat him. And the best way to understand your enemy was to learn his special tricks. Also, the skeleton's trick would be a great supplement to Han Sen's assassination skills, which was also why Han Sen would like to invest a lot of time in learning it. If he could master this trick and create the same disorder, then his target would be less likely to have the chance to fight back. These days when fighting the skeleton, Han Sen could only use the three-blade harpoon single-handedly, which weakened his attacks. I wish I had a sacred blood dagger, thought Han Sen secretly. The skeleton was good at close combat, which was why Han Sen could hardly use the diamond sword or the beetle knight spear, since the longer weapons would be more of a burden than a help when fighting the skeleton. At this point, Han Sen's issue was that he could not prevent the White Jade Skeleton from getting close to him. The White Jade Skeleton could approach him in no time with its disordered moves. Here is a mutant beast soul. Do you dare to accept my challenge? If you win, you could take the beast soul and I want nothing from you. However, if you lose, how about you give me a ghost-eyed bear for free? A young man came to Han Sen with a mutant beast soul machete in his hand. Han Sen glanced at him. If Han Sen remembered correctly, the young man's name was Wang Junfeng, one of Su Ruyan's guys. It seems that Su Ruyan has become impatient and wants to test my true ability. Han Sen sneered and asked coldly, "How will you challenge me?" "Hand-to-hand combat. Falling or admitting defeat will be considered losing," answered Wang Junfeng. Han Sen curled his lips and threw a contemptuous look at Wang Junfeng. "In my dictionary, there is no such word as losing. The winner will lose, and the loser will die. If you dare to play, then we can have a go. If not, go back to your cave." Su Ruyan wanted to test his ability, and Han Sen would not let her do that. The woman was unkind, but Han Sen did not think he himself could beat all these people. In addition, he was also in the special squad, so it would be inappropriate to kill a client of his organization, especially in front of his colleagues. Otherwise, it would be much easier to just kill the woman. Wang Junfeng heard Han Sen's words and turned pale. He looked back at Su Ruyan, who was standing by the cave. After some hesitation, Su Ruyan walked over and said, "Han Sen, we're just fooling around. Why are you being so serious?" "Fooling around?" Han Sen looked at her with a half-smile. "A challenge means human life to me. If you want to challenge me, you're welcome anytime." It was clear what Han Sen meant, so Su Ruyan was rendered speechless. After a long while, she turned around and went back to the cave. Wang Junfeng quickly followed her back and did not dare to lay a hand on Han Sen. Han Sen wished that they would have the guts to fight. Since the woman meant him harm, he would welcome any chance to kill her minions. And if the other party was the one who started the fight, the Green Special Squad would have no reason to blame him. Han Sen had set up his barbecue every day near the cave for half a month. Eventually, someone came to him. It was Fu Shan instead of Su Ruyan. He was alone, too. "For a ghost-eyed bear," said Fu Shan and transferred a mutant beast soul to Han Sen. Taking a look at the mutant beast soul, which was a spear, Han Sen smiled and said, "No problem. Tomorrow morning I will deliver the ghost-eyed bear to you." Fu Shan nodded but did not leave. He sat down next to Han Sen and said quietly, "I am not sure if you are in the special squad. Either way, since you have come here, you have to rely on the Starry Group's rescue team to go back. To that end, try not to piss off Su Ruyan too much." Hearing the down-to-earth suggestion, Han Sen said, "Does this mean that if I were in the conflict with her, you will be on her side? I brought my team members with me, and one of them has already died. I have to take the rest of them back alive," answered Fu Shan calmly, without answering Han Sen's question.
Han Sen nodded.
He understood the load on Fu Shan's mind. He would choose to do exactly the same if he were in Fu Shan's shoes. Han Sen did not completely antagonize Su Ruyan also because he knew that he would be putting the Green Special Squad in an awkward position, which would probably lead to consequences when Han Sen got back to the Alliance. Although the Special Squad was a military organization, their management team would not be able to save them from a random island in God's Sanctuary. The only possible rescue would be from the Starry Group, since they were the only ones who knew where Su Ruyan went. "If you trust me, I could make peace between you and Su Ruyan. When the rescue comes here, I will make sure that you leave this place together with us," said Fu Shan sincerely. "I thank you for your kindness, but I am not going to bow my head to the woman. The worst-case scenario, I will die here of old age, and even that is better than begging Su Ruyan." Han Sen did not even need the Starry Group ship to go back. Fu Shan gazed at Han Sen and got up. "Think about it. If you need anything, come to find me." Han Sen watched Fu Shan leave and continued to think about the skeleton's footwork and dagger skills. Han Sen believed that Fu Shan meant well, but Han Sen would not consider his proposal. Han Sen hated Su Ruyan and Starry Group. There was no way he would make peace with them. "If I don't blackmail her enough, how could I thank Son of Heaven for what he had done to me?" Han Sen thought with a sinister smile. As time went by, it had become harder and harder for the group of people to resist the temptation of meat. In addition, for most of them, a mutant beast soul was not very hard to come by. They all had several mutant beast souls, and a lot of them even had sacred blood beast souls. The less important mutant beast souls were gradually transferred to Han Sen for the primitive ghost-eyed bears that he killed. Su Ruyan had never visited Han Sen, but traded through Fu Shan. Han Sen knew about it, but did not say anything. Han Sen's plan was to first use the primitive ghost-eyed bears to strip them of their less important mutant beast souls. After Han Sen broke the egg, he would start to kill the mutant ghost-eyed bears to trade for their key mutant beast souls. This way, he could benefit much more than simply killing these people. When Su Ruyan paid a grand prize for entering the nest, she would discover the egg was already gone. Han Sen wondered what would be the look on her face at that time. In these 3 months, Han Sen had learned more and more about the weird footwork and dagger skills of the skeleton and saw the light. If it were not for the fact that Han Sen was interested in learning more about the skeleton's tricks, he could have killed it half a month ago. At this time, Han Sen had fully grasped all the tricks the skeleton had. It was time for him to kill the skeleton and break the egg. In darkness, Han Sen once again sneaked into the nest and was greeted by the skeleton's attacks per usual. Different from what happened in the past, Han Sen did not plan to retreat this time. He seized his 3-blade harpoon and calmly stared at the incoming skeleton. Han Sen now knew everything about the footwork and dagger skills of the skeleton. As the dagger almost reached him, Han Sen moved his feet slightly and stabbed his 3-blade harpoon from an impossible angle at the skeleton. Both Han Sen and the skeleton had an unpredictable style, but the difference was that Han Sen only had one weapon, while the skeleton had 2. Even so, Han Sen was still at an advantage. He knew everything about the White Jade skeleton and felt like he could control the skeleton. Suddenly, Han Sen had an epiphany. The seemingly disordered footwork and dagger skills were actually of a unique order. It was because Han Sen's understanding of order was too shallow that he felt it was out of order. After 3 months of learning, Han Sen finally understood the order of disorder and gained a deeper understanding of rhythm and order. With this epiphany, Han Sen had greatly improved his way of thinking. His opponent's footwork and dagger skills suddenly became boring in his eyes. Without any hesitation, Han Sen made a fierce step. The moment he brushed against the skeleton's skull flew up into the air. Its pair of daggers failed to hurt Han Sen, and its weird footwork did not bring it away from the three-blade harpoon. Sacred blood creature Skeleton King killed.
No beast soul gun.
Meat inedible. Han Sen was not disappointed that he gained neither beast soul nor meat, for what he had learned in the 3 months was much more valuable than a sacred blood beast soul or meat. In addition, the sacred blood Skeleton King had a pair of gears. Different from the golden axe and iron hammer, the pair of bone daggers could be sold at an incredible price. They were on the same level as the diamond sword, not to mention they came in a pair. After appreciating his new weapons for a while, Han Sen put them away and kept going. In the entire nest, he did not run into another creature. After reaching the end of the nest, Han Sen saw a translucent ellipsoid set in the black stone wall. Inside the ellipsoid, there seemed to be a flickering light. The ellipsoid was taller than himself and looked exactly the same as eggs portrayed on the Skynet. Han Sen regarded it and used the diamond sword to cut it open. Crack! The ellipsoid was cut in half, and liquid like glue flowed from it. Egg broken. Identifying beast soul. The voice was different from the one after a normal kill. Han Sen did not get the beast soul directly. Han Sen had also read this part on the Skynet. After breaking the egg, the beast soul gained would be random. Although it was possible to get anything between an ordinary beast soul to a sacred blood one, based on other people's experience, most people got sacred blood beast souls, except for a few poor devils. God bless. Don't make me one of the poor devils. Tell me this is a sacred blood beast soul, prayed Han Sen. Although the chance was very slim, it was still possible for Han Sen to gain a less advanced beast soul. Before laying his eyes on the beast soul, Han Sen was quite nervous. After praying, Han Sen paused as he suddenly thought of one thing. If the beast soul gained from breaking an egg was random, would it also be possible for him to gain a super beast soul from it? In the past, Han Sen did not know the existence of super creatures. But now, since he had discovered a super creature, there must be a corresponding super beast soul. Since it was random, Han Sen might as well get a super beast soul. God, forget about my prayer just now. Let's do it all over again. Give me a super beast soul. This might be the very first super beast soul gained in human history. You have to help me. And other deities as well. I will be so pious to all of you if you grant me a super beast soul. Han Sen quickly took back his own request and prayed some more. The liquid from the broken egg started to glow and gradually condensed into something like a holographic image. Han Sen watched the beast soul formulating in front of him without a blink and kept praying, Super beast soul. It has to be a super beast soul. Boom! The moment the beast soul was officially formed, it turned into a shadow and entered Han Sen's mind. At the same time, he heard the familiar voice. Beast soul identified. Sacred blood beast soul flame lieutenant gained. Han Sen was slightly disappointed that he did not get a super beast soul, but he understood that it was normal not to win the lottery. Sacred blood beast soul was something nice too. Han Sen summoned the beast soul he just gained. With a ball of fire, a devil-like creature appeared in front of Han Sen's eyes. It was burning with red flames and looked rather magical. Type of beast soul of flame lieutenant, aura. Looking at the 4 letters aura, Han Sen's disappointment disappeared completely. Instead, he was overjoyed. The 4 letters were simply a godsend in Han Sen's eyes. Rare did not begin to describe the scarcity of beast soul aura. Even a mutant beast soul aura could be sold at an incredible price. And that did not just apply to First God's Sanctuary. Even in Second God's Sanctuary, a good beast soul aura, even just a mutant one, would be highly popular, despite the fact that most sacred blood beast souls from First God's Sanctuary would be useless there. As long as there was an aura, all the beast souls around it would be enhanced. As far as Han Sen knew, Son of Heaven had a mutant beast soul aura. When he summoned the Beast Soul aura, it could improve the ability of all the Beast Soul within the range of 30 feet by 20%. Beast Soul weapons would become sharper, armor and shields would become tougher, and even shape-shifting Beast Souls would bring the users more power. For a team, a Beast Soul aura was definitely a core strength. When a team went hunting, if they had a Beast Soul aura, their efficiency would be multiplied. Since a Beast Soul aura could empower all the Beast Souls within a certain range, if there were several Beast Soul auras in the same team, then the enhancement would be enormous. Unfortunately, aura Beast Souls were so rare that in the entire Steel Armor Shelter, only Son of Heaven had a mutant Beast Soul aura. Even Huangfu Pingqing, who had a company dealing Beast Souls, did not have Beast Soul auras for sale. All the teams wished to have an aura Beast Soul, so bringing an aura into the second God Sanctuary, Han Sen would be invited by many experienced people to join their teams. Aura Beast Souls must be the most valuable type among all Beast Souls, as its functions were incredibly popular. Han Sen did not even expect himself to gain a Beast Soul aura because they were so hard to come by. And this one he gained was a Sacred Blood one, which brought him so much joy.
Malasia Prayersburka.
A Beast Soul aura would make me popular everywhere I go.
Han Sen celebrated.
It was already late and Han Sen took back the Flame Lieutenant and went out of the nest. Although he had already gained great stuff, Han Sen did not forget to blackmail Su Ruyan. Since there was nothing left in the nest, Han Sen could now kill the mutant ghost-eyed bears and sell them to Su Ruyan. However, Han Sen would not deign to look for her himself. Instead, he let Fu Shan know of his intention to hunt mutant ghost-eyed bears and his worry that Su Ruyan would not be interested in them. After Fu Shan told Su Ruyan about Han Sen's thoughts, Su Ruyan became thrilled and agreed to purchase however many mutant ghost-eyed bears Han Sen could hunt. Although at this point everyone only had important mutant beast souls left, Su Ruyan did not even care about the beast soul she owned when hearing the fact that Han Sen was about to kill mutant ghost-eyed bears. She promised that she would purchase all the mutant ghost-eyed bears that Han Sen would hunt. One mutant beast soul for one mutant ghost-eyed bear, and she would take them all. Although mutant beast souls were precious, they were nothing compared to what they would gain after entering the nest. So, her priority was that Han Sen killed as many as mutant ghost-eyed bears as possible. In addition, Su Ruyan had her own thoughts. Since Han Sen was trapped on the island anyway, when the Starry Group's rescue team arrived, he would have to board their ship to leave the Winded Island. At that point, if she asked him to give back all the beast souls, he would have to obey. No matter how strong he was, Han Sen would not be willing to die on this island of old age. Su Ruyan had no idea that Han Sen was never counting on the Starry Group. So far, he did not fly away only because he was not sure about the location of the Green Island. When the ship of Starry Group came here, he did not need to go on board. As long as he followed them from afar, he could fly to the Green Island. Han Sen's only concern at the point was that Starry Group would not send a rescue team. In that case, he would have to make a guess about the location of Green Island, which would be relatively riskier. Han Sen knew that if he killed too many mutant ghost-eyed bears at one time, then the ghost-eyed bear group would become too weak. Then, the others would not need to buy ghost-eyed bears from him and could just choose to hunt themselves. Since the Starry Group was not here yet, Han Sen could not leave the island anyway. He took his time and killed a mutant ghost-eyed bear once every few days to exchange for a mutant beast soul. After a month, when Han Sen had gained the 7th mutant beast soul from Su Ruyan started to discuss with Fu Shan about going to the nest. As she estimated, it was about time that Starry Group finished training new staff and sending them over. She had to beat those people to the beast soul and the egg. Otherwise, she would have achieved nothing in this trip, which could harm her position in the Starry Group. Han Sen also felt it was about time that Su Ruyan made the move, so he did not expect that she would order 3 more mutant ghost-eyed bears from him. The Starry Group is indeed full of wealthy people. Han Sen thought his source of income had already drained, and did not realize that Su Ruyan was such a big spender. Han Sen killed 4 mutant ghost-eyed bears in one day. He sold 3 of them to Su Ruyan and kept one for himself to increase his mutant geno points. On this day, Su Ruyan and others enjoyed a meal of meat stew, after which they hurried to the nest. Han Sen was not at all worried and continued to enjoy his barbecue. He seemed to have no intention to follow Su Ruyan. Su Ruyan's only concern disappeared seeing Han Sen had not noticed them. She led the team and quickened her pace. In the mountains that formed the Life Lotus, there was no real path to walk on. They had to climb the rocks to get through many places. At many places where there were paths, it was also incredibly scary to go through. The paths were less than a foot wide, and with a slip, one would fall and die. For humans could not do the same as Ghost-Eyed Bear. In addition, on the ocean, the group had lost their climbing equipment and one of the team members who had sacred blood wings, which made their situation extra hard. After entering the Life Lotus, they were soon noticed by the Ghost-Eyed Bears, whose giant bodies came and went like wind on the steep cliffs. Seeing the group of Ghost-Eyed Bears came to them fiercely, Su Ruyan ordered everyone to find a secure spot and get ready to fight. The mutant Ghost-Eyed Bears posed the most threat to them, while the primitive ones were not much trouble. At this time, since most of the mutant Ghost-Eyed Bears had been killed by Han Sen, they could cope just fine. The group of people stayed on a relatively flat platform and killed all the Ghost-Eyed Bears coming at them. Having been holding back for more than a year, the group lashed out all their anger on these creatures. With a shrill howling from the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear King, all the Ghost-Eyed Bears retreated instantaneously to higher mountains, leaving the group of people alone. The group continued marching ahead and killed all the Ghost-Eyed Bears they saw. Because the mutant Ghost-Eyed Bears were too few in numbers, they were not much of a threat. The Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear dashed to them from the cliffs fiercely, its white fur gleaming like silver. Han Sen had already landed on the top of a high mountain, watching the fight while eating barbecue. He had been curious how Su Ruyan planned to deal with the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear. On mountains like these, there was not much room for people to move around. In order to fight a strong Sacred Blood creature, one would have to have Sacred Blood wings. As Han Sen was making different presumptions, he suddenly saw Su Ruyan's body turning into a giant more than 12 feet tall. She raised a fist and threw a punch at the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear. Her fist was like a sledgehammer and landed on the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear hard. The body of the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear was very strong. Unless one were to use a Sacred Blood weapon, one could hardly hurt it. However, with Su Ruyan's punch, the arms that the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear raised to defend itself were broken, after which the giant fist continued to hit the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear in its chest. The rib cage of the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear collapsed. Spitting out blood, the Ghost-Eyed Bear fell off the cliff and was about to die. Su Ruyan, on the other hand, quickly shrank in size and turned back to herself. She looked a little pale. Han Sen was dumbstruck and did not understand what kind of beast soul Su Ruyan had used. Looking at her face, Han Sen did not think she could do that again. No wonder Su Ruyan had never given any thought to the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear, but feared the mutant ones a lot. Since she could only use the miraculous beast soul once, she could not afford to waste it on the mutant Ghost-Eyed Bears, but had to save it for the Sacred Blood one. Han Sen did not have more time to think. He quickly summoned the horned bow and the mutant black stinger arrow, aimed at the falling Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear, and made the shot. The black arrow went across the sky like a lightning bolt. As if it were equipped with a GPS device, it pierced the Ghost-Eyed Bear's head through its open mouth. When Su Ruyan, who had perfectly utilized the power of the beast's soul, was secretly celebrating, she was suddenly dumbstruck by the arrow coming out of nowhere. She quickly looked to the direction where the arrow was from and saw Han Sen on top of the mountain with a bow in his hand.
Bang!
Under the cliff, the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear fell to the ground. Su Ruyan watched Han Sen with her eyes almost spitting fire. Since Su Ruyan did not hear the voice telling her the Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear was killed, it was obvious that the kill was counted on Han Sen's head. Han Sen was so happy that he almost laughed out loud. It seemed that every time he stole the last kill, he would always gain a beast soul. And this was no exception. Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear killed. Beast soul of Sacred Blood Ghost-Eyed Bear gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points randomly. What a great harvest. It's a shame that they were not hurt. There is no chance for me to kill Su Ruyan, Han Sen said with a sigh. Throwing a fierce stare at Han Sen, Su Ruyan gritted her teeth and said nothing. They went all the way to the entrance of the nest and started going down. Su Ruyan specifically arranged for several people to guard the entrance so that Han Sen could not follow them inside. Han Sen did not have any intention to follow them into the nest, which he knew very well was basically empty. At this point, Han Sen had already come down from the mountain and ran away with the dead sacred blood ghost-eyed bear. Rushing to the nest, the group of people did not have time to think about Han Senator. On the other hand, they believed it was not that easy for Han Sen to go down the cliff. And even if he managed to leave with the body, he had nowhere to go but the island, so they could always find him later. However, Han Sen had flown away with the body before anyone noticed. When the group of people went down to the nest, they found the green gold wall was already broken. After they went in, since there were no dead creatures and the cells were all intact, they still had some hope. When they arrived at the egg and found it was broken as well, all of their hearts sank. Han Sen, I will kill you. Su Ruyan was driven mad and wanted to find Han Sen. However, no one could find him at this point. Even the sacred blood ghost-eyed bear's body was gone. Su Ruyan did not want to believe the fact that she had got nothing while Han Sen had got everything. She took her team to search the entire island, but Han Sen had completely disappeared. Shocked and mad, no one had any idea where Han Sen had gone. In fact, Han Sen only took the sacred blood ghost-eyed bear's body on the ocean to hide for a period of time. After the searching, he went back to the Wind-End Island, found an extremely steep cliff, and started to eat the sacred blood meat. Meat of sacred blood ghost-eyed bear eaten. 1 sacred Geno point gained. Each time he gained sacred Geno point, Han Sen was extremely excited. After eating the entire ghost-eyed bear, 5 more sacred Geno points were added. Han Sen now had 66 sacred Geno points. For a while, Han Sen avoided the group of people. With mountains everywhere on the island, the group was too small to search thoroughly anyways. In addition, when they searched before, they already thought that Han Sen was no longer on the island. Otherwise, it would be impossible for the sacred blood ghost-eyed bear to disappear from the island. Less than half a month after Han Sen finished eating the sacred blood ghost-eyed bear, he saw a fleet sailing over to the island. Each ship bore the logo of Starry Group. Han Sen did not know what Su Ruyan told the rescue team. One day later, the fleet left the island. Han Sen followed the fleet afar. The ships could only rely on the wind to sail and was not very fast. All Han Sen needed to do was to keep the fleet in his sight. In fact, Han Sen even thought the fleet were too slow. However, there was no modern technology allowed in God's sanctuary, so it was only natural the ships were slow. In nearly a month, Han Sen did not run into any danger and fed on some marine creatures from time to time. As for the sacred blood marine beast mentioned by the group, Han Sen had never seen it. Maybe it was scared away by the fleet. Han Sen finally understood that when the group of people came here, they must have come in a similar fleet. However, they ran into a sacred blood marine beast, and only one ship of the fleet arrived at their destination. And that ship collapsed in the end as well. One day, Han Sen eventually saw a piece of land and felt overjoyed. When he landed on the place he saw, he realized that it was the green island the group of people were talking about. However, it was not a real island, but a peninsula connected to the mainland. On the peninsula, there was a green shelter. Han Sen used the teleport device in Green Shelter to return to Blackhawk. It had been almost a year since he came to God's sanctuary. Han Sen wondered how his friends and the Steel Armor Special Squad were doing. After returning to his dorm, all his roommates were delighted to see him. They thought that Han Sen must have died in God's sanctuary considering how long he had been gone. In this day and age, this sort of thing was very common. Few people could come back after disappearing for a long time. Han Sen's roommates were all sophomores and about to become juniors. However, Han Sen must take the makeup assessment, the score of which would determine whether or not he could stay in Blackhawk. There were many precedents like this, so there was a rule that as long as the returning students passed the assessment, they would be allowed to continue their study. If they could not pass, they would be expelled. Han Sen was not that worried about the assessment. He took up his comlink and saw many unanswered calls, the majority of which were from Ji Yanran. His mother also called him many times. Zhang Danfeng, Qin Xian, Yang Manli, Tang Zhenliu, Wang Mingming, Huang Fu Pingqing, Lin Beifeng and Chu Lily had also called him. Han Sen first dialed his mother's number, and the call immediately went through. Although Luo Sulan did not know that Han Sen had disappeared in the god's sanctuary, but she was quite worried since Han Sen had not called him in a long time. Han Sen did not mention anything about his adventure, but told his mother that he was busy with his study. He would rather hear his mother's complaints than for her to worry. After chatting with his mother for a long time, Han Sen tried calling Ji Yanran. Although he knew that it very likely would not go through, he still decided to give it a shot. Indeed, her service had been discontinued. Han Sen's roommates had already told him that Ji Yanran had left Blackhawk to do an internship. They said she was serving on an interstellar warship. After being enlisted, one must use a special comlink and could not use an ordinary one. So, there was no way that Han Sen could reach his girlfriend. His roommates also told him that Ji Yanran had lost a lot of weight since Han Sen disappeared. She also became extremely silent. Except for studying like there was no tomorrow, she rarely went to any Hand of God Society activities. Several months ago, she left Blackhawk for an internship on the warship. Han Sen felt guilty, but there was nothing he could do. He dialed back to call everyone who had called him and told them he was safe. Chu Lily went to the warship together with Ji Yanran, so Han Sen could not contact her either. Qin Xian's number was still in service, but no one answered. Han Sen assumed she must be in Second God's sanctuary. Han Sen thought that since he had been gone for so long, a new head of the special squad must have been appointed in his stead. After all, there were rules about that. What he did not expect was that he still had the position, and young Monli had taken care of all the business of the special squad. Han Sen was surprised. In this condition, young Monli as his deputy could have stepped up and replaced him. However, she chose to leave the position to him. After talking to other members in the special squad, Han Sen learned that the management wanted for young Monli to take his place, but young Monli refused. Han Sen was surprised about his finding. He knew that young Monli had always wanted to become the head of the special squad and could not imagine she would give up such a perfect opportunity. He dialed young Monli's number and wanted to thank her. However, young Monli simply told him what happened in the special squad in this year in an impersonal tone and did not give him any chance. In fact, the two of them did not have the best relationship, and Han Sen felt it was difficult for him to say something nice as well. Although Han Sen did not care that much about this position, he still needed to thank young Monli for helping him. "Brother, why didn't you inform me when you came back?" Huang Fu Pingqing called Han Sen and said. "Because I'm scared," said Han Sen with a smile. He had blackmailed Su Ruyan in the worst way possible, and of course had offended the Starry Group. Huang Fu Pingqing was Son of Heaven's cousin, so Han Sen was not sure if he should call her. Ares Marshall Hall had always been conducting business among different shelters, so no one would know better how to go back to Steel Armor Shelter from Green Shelter than Huang Fu Pingqing. Han Sen wanted to get the information from Huang Fu Pingqing on how to going back to Steel Armor Shelter. Otherwise, he would not be able to eat the sacred blood creature he had been feeding. "Haha, how did you dare to blackmail Su Ruyan like that since you're scared? If my cousin Son of Heaven is still in Steel Armor Shelter, I would advise you never to go back." However, he had evolved and gone to Second God's sanctuary, and you wouldn't have any chance to see him there again. Obviously, Huang Fu Pingqing had learned what Han Sen had done on Windend Island, and she was rather shocked. Son of Heaven became an evolver? Han Sen was dazed. But that made a lot of sense, since Son of Heaven had about the same geno point count as Qin Xian, and it was about time that he evolved. "Do you want to go back from Green Shelter?" asked Huang Fu Pingqing seriously. "Of course I do. Do you have any good ideas?" Han Sen did not expect Huang Fu Pingqing to bring this up first. Of course. However, it could be very costly. Huang Fu Pingqing grinned and said, "How much?" Han Sen had blackmailed a lot of mutant beast souls from Su Ruyan and had gained a lot of other stuff. At this point, he could afford spending some money. "If it were anyone else, I would not go through such trouble no matter how much I could earn. However, in your case, as long as you're willing to become a member of Ares Marshall Hall, I would make sure that you go back safely."
Huang Fu Pingqing blinked at Han Sen.
"Please name the price first." Han Sen frowned and said. He did not want to be regulated. In addition, since seeing the super creature Golden Growler, Han Sen had a different mindset. At the time being, His goal was to hunt super creatures and gain super geno points. Becoming a part of an organization would only slow him down. How about the sacred blood beast soul you gained from the nest? Huang Fu Pingqing was quite flexible. This price is too high, isn't it?
Han Sen frov ned.
You know that from green shelter to steel armor shelter, you have to go through more than 5 other shelters. The trip would be highly unsafe. I will have to dispatch our guys in each and every shelter to take you back safely. The difficulties and cost were beyond your imagination. If it were not for you, I would not even do it for 2 sacred blood beast souls, said Huang Fu Pingqing seriously. How about you give me a map, and I can travel on my own? Han Sen pondered and suggested. Without someone leading the way, you might easily run into troubles. Think again before you choose to do this, advised Huang Fu Pingqing. That's fine. I just need a map, insisted Han Senator. There was no way he would give her the sacred blood beast soul. However, the map, which was not even very detailed, was a trade secret. Han Sen used 5 mutant beast souls to buy all the data and map from Huang Fu Pingqing. Han Sen teleported to God's sanctuary, made the deal with Huang Fu Pingqing's guys in green shelter, and obtained all the materials and map. However, Han Sen did not leave for steel armor shelter immediately. He must pass the makeup assessment in Blackhawk first. If he entered God's sanctuary and spent a lot of time there again, he might be expelled for real. The makeup assessment was quite smooth for Han Senator. He did not do that well in some theory courses, but his overall grades still met the requirements. Han Sen had also won many victories for the school before, so he successfully became a sophomore and could be a junior in a short period of time. Of course, Han Sen had missed all the Military Academy League contests and the chosen contest in God's Sanctuary, for which he did not feel sorry, since all he could think about right now was super creatures and super geno points. Other things were of little meaning to him. However, it was impossible to kill a super creature with sacred blood beast souls alone. It was the same as a sacred blood creature could hardly be killed with just mutant beast souls. Sacred blood beast souls posed little threat to a super creature. Han Sen used everything he got and could not even hurt a baby golden growler, not to mention an adult super creature. With a lot of thoughts, Han Sen decided that in addition to maxing out all types of geno points, the one thing that could significantly improve the possibility of success was hyper-geno art. Only the strongest hyper-geno art could lead to a breakthrough and allow him to hunt and super creatures. Maybe I would be able to become the first person who maxes out on super geno points in human history. Han Sen was completely focused on super geno points and could not be distracted by anything else. How to kill a super creature was the most important question in his mind. There was not anything about super creatures on the Skynet or the Special Squad Insider materials. It was very likely that humans had never killed a super creature so far. Maybe some people had encountered super creatures, but since they were not able to kill one, they would never know that it was a super creature, but took for granted that it was an especially strong sacred blood creature. When Han Sen first saw the golden growler, he also thought it was just a strong sacred blood creature and did not realize there was a higher level. Without any data, Han Sen had to rely on himself to kill super creatures. Without any way to gain a super beast soul, Han Sen had to practice some stronger hyper-geno arts. Han Sen would max out on his sacred geno points one day, which was bound to happen. However, even with all 4 types of geno points maxed out, Han Sen did not believe he could be a threat to any super creature. Han Sen had to become stronger in order to kill a super creature. Having seen how powerful the golden growler was, Han Sen had an idea what kind of strength could be threatening to a super creature. Han Sen's only hope at the point was hyper-geno arts. He had been practicing Jade Skin, but it was not a hyper-geno art that could be rushed. If Han Sen had started since his childhood, maybe he would have made more progress. However, he started quite late, and it took time for him to be significantly stronger. At the time being, Han Sen still had 5 S-Class St. Hall licenses. In the past year, the Special Squad had provided him with nearly 100 points, which could also be traded for S-Class licenses or Geno solutions. However, Han Sen had no idea which hyper-geno art could increase his strength significantly. Han Sen found Bai Yishan's number from his comlink. As a professor and maester in the St. Hall, Bai Yishan was a part of many research programs of hyper-geno arts. There should be no one that knew hyper-geno arts better than him. Han Sen decided to ask for his help. Bai Yishan was glad to see Han Senator. He had always been paying attention to Han Sen, and more specifically, how Han Sen had practiced Yin-Yang Blast and put it into use. When Han Sen first disappeared, Bai Yishan was constantly asking the president of Blackhawk about Han Senator. However, Han Sen had been gone for so long that Bai Yishan thought something had happened to him. Surprisingly, Han Sen came back, which made Bai Yishan very happy. He asked Han Sen many questions about his practice of Yin-Yang Blast. Han Sen took his time and answered all Bai Yishan's questions. After that, Han Sen asked, "Professor, I have some questions about hyper-geno arts that I'd like to ask you. Do you have a minute?" "What you want to ask?" asked Bai Yishan. "I want to know, in all the hyper-geno arts that could be practiced by the unevolved, which one had the most destructive power?"
Han Sen asked.
Destructive power is a vague term. Bai Yishan thought about it and said, for example, the Yin-Yang Blast you practice could be very destructive if you use it properly. You could even use a mutant beast soul weapon to kill a sacred blood creature with that hyper-geno art. Isn't that enough? It is unfortunate that what I want to kill is much stronger sacred blood creatures, thought Han Senator. He smiled bitterly, organized his words, and said, "Say, is there a hyper-geno art that would allow me to shred the shell of a sacred blood crystal-shelled turtle with bare hands?" The sacred blood crystal-shelled turtle was a creature known for its tough shell. People called it the toughest sacred blood creature in First God's Sanctuary. In Han Sen's opinion, the fur of the golden growler should be even tougher than the shell of the sacred blood crystal-shelled turtle. However, he could not describe it to Bai Yishan, so he thought of an example. To tear apart the shell of the sacred blood crystal-shelled turtle without the help of any tools was almost impossible, even for those who had maxed out on all types of geno points. Bai Yishan heard Han Sen's question and started to think. Isn't there a hyper-geno art that could increase one's strength significantly to make that happen?
Han Sen frov ned.
If he could not even tear apart the turtle shell, it would be less likely for him to kill the golden growler. Bai Yishan thought about it and replied, "It would be easy to achieve that if you were to practice the hyper-geno arts for evolvers. Many hyper-geno arts that change your body cells could achieve the effect you described. However, the hyper-geno arts for the unevolved, I could not think of any." Han Sen, why are you asking me this? You do not have to achieve that. With any sacred blood beast soul weapon, you could kill anything you see in First God's Sanctuary. When you evolve and go to Second God's Sanctuary, everything will become natural for you.
Bai Yishan looked at Han Sen puzzled.
It is just a personal preference. Is there really no hyper-geno art that could allow me to do that?
Han Sen insisted.
If there was no hyper-geno art that could help him to achieve that, all he could count on would be super beast souls. However, the source of the super beast souls remained an issue. Han Sen could only think of the nest so far, and he was not even sure whether there could be super beast souls in the eggs. In fact, you would not need to think about all that. If you practice Yin-Yang Blast well, you could use the Yin force to penetrate the turtle shell and break the inner organs of the sacred blood crystal-shelled turtle, suggested Bai Yishan, getting a kick out of the fact that he was the one who invented Yin-Yang Blast. Han Sen secretly shook his head. If that could work, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. He was able to stab the baby golden growler in the eye, but could not even hurt it with Yin-Yang Blast. Even the most vulnerable eyes were so tough. Han Sen could only imagine that the baby golden growler had tougher inner organs. If he did not have enough strength to begin with, even with the Yin force, Han Sen would not be able to hurt its organs. "Professor, isn't there a hyper-geno art that could fundamentally enhance one's strength to an incredible level?" Han Sen had to ask. Seeing the disappointment in Han Sen's face, Bai Yishan touched his chin and thought for a long while before he said, "I can't say there isn't, but..." Bai Yishan paused and did not continue. Han Sen, on the other hand, was overjoyed. He thought there was no hope and did not expect to get a positive answer. He quickly asked Bai Yishan, "Professor, do you have any hyper-geno art in mind?" Bai Yishan hesitated and then continued, "It's not exactly a hyper-geno art. You know that hyper-geno arts all came from ancient martial arts. More than 20 years ago, an incomplete version of Heresy Sutra was unearthed. Since it was incomplete, most ancient martial arts recorded in the book are no longer suitable for practice. Only an ancient martial art called heresy mantra was relatively complete. If you could practice this ancient martial art to a certain level, it would be easy for you to break gold with bare hands. Is the heresy mantra in the S-class section of the St. Hall?
Asked Han Sen excitedly.
Bai Yishan shook his head and said, although many authoritative professors had done research about the heresy mantra and wanted to modify it into a hypergeno art, they had discovered its problems after many experiments. So, is the heresy mantra not as powerful as they thought it would be? Asked Han Sen. Bai Yishan replied, it's not that. After practicing heresy mantra, the volunteers did experience incredible enhancement in their physique. However, they also went through something weird. Something weird?
Han Sen looked at Bai Yishan.
Bai Yishan pondered and organized his words. So, every volunteer who tried to practice heresy mantra would have too good an appetite. After hearing Bai Yishan's reply, Han Sen was dazed. He assumed it was some serious issue and did not expect it to be as simple as too good an appetite. Bai Yishan knew what Han Sen was thinking from his look. He said seriously, maybe you cannot imagine what it's like to have too good an appetite. I'll put it this way, normal people would feel full, but those who practiced heresy mantra would lose the sense of fullness. No matter how much stuff was already in his stomach, he would still feel hungry. Among the 6 volunteers who tried to practice heresy mantra, 2 were almost stuffed to death. When they stopped practicing heresy mantra, the sense of hunger slowly disappeared. So, does the heresy mantra work well?
Han Sen asked.
I don't know. Bai Yishan's reply made Han Sen pause again. Bai Yishan had said earlier that heresy mantra was very effective. Bai Yishan understood Han Sen's thoughts and explained. After practicing heresy mantra, the 6 volunteers had witnessed great improvements in their speed and strength. However, because of the unbearable hunger, they all gave up practicing. Since none of them had reached the first phase of heresy mantra, the enhancement of their physique disappeared with their sense of hunger. I would say one would have to reach the first phase to tell how heresy mantra works. So, nobody else practiced heresy mantra again? Han Sen could not help asking. We had many volunteers who had practiced it, but none of them could get past the hunger. Nobody could persist to finish the first phase, said Bai Yishan. How many phases are there in heresy mantra? Han Sen started to get interested in heresy mantra. Since there were no risks after giving up, he would like to try his luck. After all, this was the only thing that Bai Yishan could think of after hearing his needs. Han Sen had to see how it worked. There are 4 phases: keeping the vital energy, seeing through the mirage, longevity, and immortality. The volunteers never even reached the first phase of keeping the vital energy. That was why heresy mantra was never adapted into a hypergeno art. Professor, would you mind if I try to practice heresy mantra? I could give you an S-class license for it. Han Sen decided to give it a shot, for there was some hope. In order to kill super creatures, Han Sen would not say no to any possibility. No need for the license. Since heresy mantra has not yet been listed as a hypergeno art, it is not for sale. If you're really interested, I can apply for a volunteer opportunity on your behalf. You could practice heresy mantra, but need to provide certain data to the St. Hall, said Bai Yishan. Thank you so much. I would love that. Han Sen then asked Bai Yishan more questions about hypergeno arts. Bai Yishan could not think of any hypergeno art that could meet Han Sen's demands. Even the advanced atomic fission would not necessarily allow one to tear the turtleneck apart with bare hands. And that was a hypergeno art that took 1 to 2 decades to get anywhere. Heresy mantra was different. According to Bai Yishan, if the volunteers did not give up, they could reach the first phase in about 3 months. Han Sen then asked Bai Yishan about other hypergeno arts that could improve his fitness in general. When fighting super creatures, Han Sen not only needed to be strong, but also need to be fast enough to dodge the super creature's attacks. After chatting with Bai Yishan for several hours, Han Sen finally hung up. Bai Yishan went to apply for Han Sen's volunteer quota, while Han Sen went to the Office of Academic Affairs for some paperwork. He needed enough time to travel from Green Shelter to Steel Armor Shelter, so he must miss some activities on campus including archery competitions and a series of tests and examinations. Fortunately, Black Hawk had related regulations in this regard. After Han Sen provided enough proof, the school approved his application. Han Sen planned to leave Green Shelter when he got his hands on Heresy Mantra. He planned to practice it on the way, since it was not something dangerous to practice other than generating the sense of hunger. The worst-case scenario, he could just give up practicing, which would cause him no harm.